Hello everyone, I am Ankit and you're watching StudyIQ IAS English channel. Now whenever inflation comes in the news, it automatically means the inflation as per the consumer price index. But every time there is a mention of food inflation in India, this has been measured by another index known as consumer food price index. So what is consumer food price index? How is it same or different as compared to consumer price index? Let us find out in our today's discussion, and we'll also have a discussion on what has led to cooling down of food inflation in recent times. Now if you want to download the notes that I'll be using in our today's discussion, you can go to a particular Telegram channel known as ATS Live. Using this channel you can download the notes and subscribe to the channel also for future updates regarding whatever we discuss on YouTube, right? Now, first of all, let me give you certain context. As per the recent data given by the National Statistical Office, the inflation in India, which is measured by consumer price index, it has been shown that it is very low at 2.1%, and this is very important. First of all, RBI is statutorily responsible to keep the inflation between the levels of 2 to 6% because it has been made a responsibility of RBI. So now the inflation is at the lower side of this tolerant price bracket, right? Similarly, food inflation in India is witnessing a negative inflation of 1.1%, right? So here the food inflation is actually witnessing a deflation. Now in economy, there are three very similar but related terms known as inflation, deflation, and disinflation. Do you know the difference between these three terms? If you don't know the difference, let me tell you very simply. Now let us assume in 2022 the price of any commodity was 100 rupees, right? So this was the price of any commodity in 2022. Now in next year, in 2023, the price of this commodity from rupees 100 increases to 110 rupees. So from this logic, we can say that the inflation in this year was 10%, right? But now in 2024, let's assume that the price of this commodity increased further, but to rupees 115. So the inflation between these 2 years would be 4.5%, right? So from inflation, which was 10% from the year 2022 to 23, this inflation has reduced to 4.5%. Now both of these show that actually there is an inflation, but the amount of inflation has reduced. So this is called as disinflation, which means the prices are increasing, but it is not as increasing as it was in last year. Now let us consider another factor. From 2022, when the price was rupees 100, it reduced to 95 rupees in the year 2023. So here the prices of this commodity has reduced by how much? By 5%. So this reduction in inflation is called as deflation. It is very easy to understand these terms. When you inflate the balloon, the size of balloon increases. So size of balloon increases means inflation. But if you take the air out of this balloon, it means the balloon has been deflated, which means the size of balloon reduced. Similarly, if prices increase, that is inflation. If the prices decrease, that is deflation. But if the prices keep on increase, but at a lesser rate, this is called as disinflation, right? So this is what is happening in India. India is witnessing a deflation with respect to food inflation. And as per the consumer price as well as food inflation, India is witnessing the lowest amount of food inflation in the last 6 or 7 years. So this is a very important thing that we have to understand. Now to calculate inflation in India, we rely on a particular index known as consumer price index. Consumer price index tells us about the inflation at retail level. So people like you and I, whenever we go to a market and we pay prices for that commodity, inflation at that level is calculated using the CPI. Now obviously people like you and I, we spend our money not just on food items but on different commodities. We spend our money on clothing and footwear, on paying the rents of our houses, using electricity, LPG to power our houses and kitchen, paying for education, healthcare, transportation, communication, etc., right? So therefore the CPI calculates inflation for different commodities, but the weights given to these commodities differ because automatically we eat food at least twice a day. But do you think we spend on education every day? No, we pay our education related bills, healthcare related bills once a month, once a year, once in quarter, right? Similarly, for communication, do you think you recharge your mobile every day? No. You might be recharging your mobile once every 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, etc. Right? So therefore, our day-to-day spending depends on items that we need the most. And humans in general, they need food items, obviously. So the majority weightage here, not the majority, the larger weightage here is given to food and beverage sector, that is 45.86%. But do you think you can calculate inflation using just this component of the CPI? The answer would be no, because we have to include certain food items that are consumed on a daily basis, and we have to eliminate certain food items that are not consumed on a daily basis to effectively figure out what the food inflation level is at the consumer level. So for that purpose, we constitute a different index, and this is called as consumer food price index. So among all the food beverage items that are covered in the CPI, we include cereals, meat, fish, eggs, milk, oats, etc., fruits, vegetables, and all of these essential items are included when you calculate food inflation. But there are certain items which are not consumed by a majority portion of the society. These might be non-alcoholic beverages, these might be sweets, these might be pan, tobacco, intoxicants. So these items which are not consumed by majority section of our population, these are not considered whenever you have to calculate the food inflation. So the upper portion is included in food inflation, the lower portion isn't, and this constitutes what is known as consumer food price index. Now I told you food and beverage altogether constitute 45.86% of weight in the consumer price index. But when you calculate all the items that is given in consumer food price index, they constitute roughly 39% of the total weight of items included in CPI. So essentially, the lesser amount of items are used to calculate consumer food price index, and I've given you the logic. Items which are not consumed on a daily basis by majority section of the people, they have been removed. Why prepared meals and snacks? Do you think people living in rural areas are buying as many processed items or food like the urban area people? The answer is no, right? So these are the exclusions that have been made in the consumer food price index. Now let us understand the factor that have contributed to cooling down of the price levels in food items. Now whenever we deal with price levels in economy, the price levels of any commodity is driven by two prime factors. These are called as factors of demand and these are called as factors of supply. Now, the fact about food is that the demand of food, at least in short-term perspective, does not change dramatically. So, the demand of food items actually does not play an important role whenever we have to calculate the prices of food items. So, the factor that contributes a lot to the prices of food items is the supply. And you understand, whenever the supply of any commodity increases, it puts a negative pressure on the prices, and the reverse is also true. If the supply of food items faces certain problems or there is a less supply of food items, it leads to increase in prices. Let's assume the prices of onions in the winter months. You see, the supply of onion gets reduced in the winter months due to production issues, and that is why the prices of onions sometimes skyrocket as much as 100 rupees per kilogram. So the major factor or the larger factor that determines the prices of food items is the supply. So how has government ensured steady supply of food items, which has led to cooling down of food inflation? Let us understand these factors one by one. Now, the one major factor that contributes to good agriculture in India is the amount of rainfall. And India in the last 2 years, that is in the 2023 and 24, and this financial year is witnessing good rainfall. For example, in last monsoon, India witnessed surplus rainfall that was 7.6% over and above the long period of average. And because of surplus monsoon last year, it led to better soil moisture in our farms. Reservoir which were used to supply waters for irrigation had plenty of waters, and even the groundwater levels got recharged because of good rainfall, and this contributed to excellent yields of crops in both Rabi and Kharif season last year. Similarly, this year also India has witnessed strong monsoon continuity, and IMD has also given a projection that India this year will also witness a surplus amount of rainfall. And because of early onset of monsoon in India, especially when it reached 8 days before in Kerala, it has led to good sowing of crops in India, and therefore it is assumed that Kharif crops in India, most of these kharif crops will witness good production. So therefore, because of good monsoon, our agricultural supplies increase, and this has created a downward pressure on the prices of food items. Another factors that have created a good supply of food items is the resilient imports that have been done by India. Now, we eat or we consume oil seeds on a daily basis. Similarly, pulses are in very high demand in India. But because of these two items, these are so high in demand in India, we are unable to produce these items effectively in India. So major portion of these items are also imported into India. Now, to bring good imports, to keep a steady supply of these commodities, the government has made record imports of pulses and vegetable oil this year. Similarly, government has also reduced the import duties on these items so that the cost of the import also reduces. And when supply of these commodities increase and the cost of these commodities to bring them in Indian ports have reduced, this has effectively cooled down the price pressures in India, right? So because of zero to very low amount of import duties on pulses and edible oil respectively, and a record amount of input, this has led to steady supply and reduced cost of our food products. But let us understand how this cooling down of food prices will impact Indian economy. Now, you need to understand that RBI has a statutory responsibility of keeping the inflation at a steady level, that is plus minus 4% of the CPI, that is the consumer price index. Now, whenever the inflation levels are low in the economy, the RBI now would want to promote growth. And how can RBI promote good GDP growth? It needs to bring what is known as increase in money supply, which is also known as easy monetary policy. And how can you increase the money supply? You can reduce the repo rate. Therefore, RBI can now consider reducing the repo rate even further, because earlier RBI was unable to reduce the repo rate because of inflation. But now, since the inflation has cooled down, RBI can consider cutting the repo rate. Also, lower CPI means that there will be higher real interest rate. Real interest rate is the difference between repo rate and inflation, right? So, real interest rate is the difference between repo rate minus the inflation. So, lesser is the value of inflation, higher will be the real interest rate. So, whenever consumers like you and I, we perceive that the real interest rate in the Indian economy increases, it will promote more and more savings. And how people save their money? They increase or they make deposits in the bank. So, in this regard, banks will witness huge amount of deposits by the consumers, and banks can use this deposit to extend more and more loans to our business sector, to our farming sector. And this will create more and more production of goods and services, can create good GDP growth, and will also lead to higher employment figures in India. Similarly, whenever people have surplus amount of money with them because of less inflation, this might also lead to greater demand for goods and services. And to fulfill this demand, automatically the industry will have to boost its production levels, which will also contribute to GDP growth as well as the levels of employment in the country, right? So these are the good consequences of less inflation in the economy. And similarly, India will also witness what is called as cereal comfort, because whenever the prices of food items is less, government procures a lot of these food items in its stock buffer. And whenever there is a less supply of these food stocks in the market, the government offloads these stocks in the open market, which increases the supply of food items and automatically reducing the prices of these food items, right? So this is how it will impact Indian inflation, how it will impact the monetary policy decisions by the RBI in future, that now with cooling inflation, RBI can consider cutting of its repo rate. Now, there are certain challenges also that the government might face in near term. So, let us address those challenges also. First is that because of the remunerative policies of the government through MSP, we witness that the farmers are more inclined to grow rice and wheat because these are guaranteed procured by the government. Whereas the farmers, they are shying away from growing pulses and oil seeds, and therefore the production of these two commodities may witness further supply crunch, because the government and the farmers, they are looking to grow more and more rice wheat so as to gain remunerative advantage. So the supply of these items may face constraint because of decreased sowing of these crops. Similarly, monsoon has a habit of being very uncertain. If good monsoon leads to good agricultural yield, bad monsoon or erratic monsoon can lead to lower yield of agriculture. And in that case, if the monsoon actually becomes uncertain, God forbid, but if that happens, it will further reduce the yield and it will also reduce the supply of the crop, right? So this is how it might impact. Another factor that has played a very important role is the lack of availability of good quality fertilizers in India. If you look at the government stocks of urea, diammonium phosphate and complex fertilizers all have reduced, and the primary responsible factor is because of reduced imports that government is able to secure from China. Now China is reducing its export to other countries, and therefore India is unable to import as many fertilizers as it would have desired from China. And because of reduced supply of fertilizers in India, this has created an upward pressure on the prices of fertilizers. So when prices of fertilizers increase, it increases the cost of production, and ultimately the farmers will pass this increased cost by putting the higher prices of their commodities, right? So this is how in short term, the government might face certain challenges despite very low levels of food inflation right now. Now, I have a practice question, but before that, I wanted to convey something to you. Now, students, especially the ones who are looking to give exams later year in 27 or 28, how is your planning of preparation? Do you think without any guidance, without any mentorship, without any good content, you think you can clear this exam? The answer is yet, but that would be very tough, right? You can make things easier for us, things more manageable by taking one of our courses in StudyIQ. Now, resolution, here we provide foundational level P2I batches. The word P2I means we cover everything from prelims to interview. So your classes, test series, mentorship, everything will be covered here, and you can take admissions to the batch which is starting from 31st of July, and the admissions will close on 31st of July by using the code ATS Live. And using this code, you will get 7,000 rupees off on all the courses that are there in StudyIQ platform, not just these courses. We also have batches for 2026 and 28, so choose accordingly, right? Now, this is the practice question that I'd want each and every one of you to solve before we end our today's discussion. What do you think is the right answer to this question? Do let me know in the comments, and the ones who answer it correctly will get a thumbs up from my side. What are the prices of essential commodities near your house? Please also do let me know in the comment section. And once again, if you want to download the notes, these will be available on the ATS Live Telegram channel. So this is all from my side for today. We'll see each other. Please have a very good day.